and we're here with our very first look at the Apple iPhone. It does have a touchscreen. It's pretty unique on a cell phone, and there are absolutely no buttons except one right down here that takes you back to the home menu. Heard a lot about this virtual keyboard. That pops right up. The only thing I was concerned about, though, is I really would like the keyboard to be displayed horizontally like this. We'll just look at the photos. So we'll select that picture of Donald. See, there he is. And there's this nice zoom in. And pinch your fingers together, and you can see the picture gets close. But of course, this is the iPhone. It's all about music and video in a lot of ways. Go over to Donald.
All right. You can find your music. You can turn it into landscape mode here. You can flip through your music using cover flow. Find an album you want to play. Double click on it. Find the track you want to play. Click on that, and it's already playing.
When it comes to ease of use, the iPhone 3G's interface is straight gorgeous. It just makes sense when you pick it up. It's multi-touching at its best, and the touchscreen is super responsive. iPhone is loaded with Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth, and the iTunes App Store makes the development possibilities endless. Apple's iPhone 3G is multimedia on a cell phone at its highest level. Now, the music quality is great, and sure, there is no live TV service, but the video quality is so ridiculous that watching a full-length movie is straight up enjoyable. The iPhone 3GS has perfected ease of use on a mobile device. I know it sounds corny, but it just makes sense. Navigating through the OS with multi-touch present across apps like Maps, web browsing, and viewing your pictures. Its App Store is unmatched and has made it more than just a phone. Its cut, copy, and paste is well executed, but it still has no multitasking capabilities. We're waiting for flash support, and its notification system pops up and gets in the way.
From the start, you see this is a very different iPhone in design. A couple other changes in design. You see that there's a camera right here that is a VGA camera. You can use that for self-portraits or for the FaceTime video calling feature. It is 5 megapixel. It also records HD video. The iPhone 4 isn't the first handset to offer this feature, but it certainly works well. We recorded some quick videos, and they looked really great. There's still no white balance or brightness or color tones or anything like that, but I'm kind of used to seeing that from Apple. They've never really taken the camera and added a lot of customization with it. This is Apple's Retina display, and the reason they call that is they say that its resolution is beyond what's perceivable by the human eye. There's been some debate about whether that's really true, but I can say that the display is absolutely stunning. You can't see any pixels at all. Colors are fantastic. Text looks great. Websites, photos, videos, everything I was looking at was really, really great. With the design, the iPhone 4S is exactly the same as the iPhone 4. The only difference as you'd see is that the CDMA versions don't have a line where the GSM does in the antenna, but that's really it. One thing I would like to see in the design at some point is a bigger screen. It's 3.5 inches. That hasn't grown since the iPhone came out in 2007. We see a lot of phones now that are 4.5. I think 4.5 might be a little too big. But you do notice a difference if you have a larger phone and then you switch back to this one. But the iPhone 4S does bring a few changes. The first is Siri. Siri is a voice assistant program. Now, the iPhone has always had voice commands and dialing, but Siri goes a whole step further by also delivering all sorts of information. So you can ask it to do things, and you can ask it to deliver information.
It looks a lot like an iPhone from the front. On the back, it looks a little bit different, maybe almost like a MacBook or an iPad, because there's an aluminum back that's either shaded silver or dark slate gray on the black model. So let's talk about that screen first, because this is the first time that the iPhone has gone for a larger screen. There's been a Retina display movement that doubled the pixel resolution, but never a larger screen that went beyond 3.5 inches. Another design change you can totally see on the bottom of the iPhone 5 is that headphone connector is now on the bottom. It's like an iPod Touch. And also the speakers have been reoriented, and in the middle there, that's the lightning connector, the controversial lightning connector. That's because you're going to have to change out your USB cables, your accessories to accommodate that. And where have we seen this before? That's right, there were plastic back iPhones before the iPhone 4, and the feel, that glossy plastic feel, is pretty similar. Not only can you pick which color you want, but there are also a bunch of cute little rubber cases that Apple's selling for $29 each. Under the hood, it's really just an iPhone 5, so it's not some sort of new kid phone experience or a totally different iPhone experience. It's a new design for the exterior. iOS 7 is now pre-installed, as it is with the iPhone 5S, so you're getting a pretty different overhaul graphically for the operating system. But basically, when you boil it down, the experience is pretty similar. There are a couple of additional features, like the free iTunes radio streaming service, AirDrop, which allows you to share files locally with people, and you also have FaceTime audio calling, which sounds pretty good if you're on Wi-Fi. It sounds a lot better than making regular phone calls via cellular. Now, the iPhone 5S's biggest party trick that you will want to show off to your friends is probably Touch ID. That home button has changed. There's no little square there anymore, and it is still clickable, but built in underneath is a capacitive sensor that actually scans your fingerprint, any finger, or even your toe. It worked. Now, that sounds kind of great, and the technology is really fast, much faster than any other fingerprint sensor, but curb your excitement at the moment because what Touch ID does is pretty limited right now. You've got a new video recording mode. It actually gives true slow-mo recording capability in 720p at 120 frames per second, and then at any time afterwards, you can actually toggle and adjust where the slow-mo effect kicks in. The iPhone 6 is a completely different look, much more like other Android phones, and the biggest difference is that 4.7-inch screen. This is a lot bigger if you're an iPhone person, because even compared to an iPhone 5S, you can see the difference. And if you come from an iPhone 4S or before that, it's a big difference. Just know that this is really thin, this is comfortable to hold, and it has a very iPod Touch-like design in terms of how wafer thin it is. It really feels nice in a pocket, good hand feel, and it's all metal around the back this time. The other big feature on this phone, which we can't use yet, is Apple Pay. Apple Pay is Apple's attempt to create a mobile wallet technology that you can use anywhere and use the Touch ID to make secure payments.
Apple's really going after the larger smartphone market, the phablet market, if you will, with this, the new iPhone 6 Plus, a 5.5-inch 1080p display that's IPS and looks great. It's very good in bright sunlight and also very good at odd angles. Apple's displays have always been good. This one is particularly good as well. On the back we have an 8-megapixel optically stabilized camera, which sets this phone apart from the iPhone 6, which does not have optical stabilization. Another big difference between the 6 Plus and the 6 is battery life. Bigger phone means more room for battery in there. We were definitely able to get through a full day of consistently heavy smartphone usage. Now that's obviously going to change as the phones get older, the batteries get a little bit more tired, but out of the box we saw really impressive battery life out of the 6 Plus.
The iPhone 6S and 6S Plus are in the wild, and you, smartphone shopper, have a choice to make. Do you get one? And if so, which? Faster Touch ID. I use Touch ID for lots of stuff now, mainly unlocking my phone. Apple's not kidding that Touch ID is faster. In fact, it's so fast that I usually can't even see my lock screen. It feels instant. Always on Siri. It really is always on. When driving, I tried asking for directions. At home, I asked about the weather. I set reminders, alarms, I played music. 3D Touch? Bit of a soft sell. It's a really cool idea with a huge upside. You're pressing into the screen, but it doesn't live up to its full potential right now. iOS has peekable previews that can pop out into new apps, little pop-up menus from your home screen, but I want even more. The iPhone 6 had a great set of cameras. The 6S rear camera is a bit better, but the selfies are miles better, and the new built-in flash works really well. Live photos are like GIFs with audio. They can feel like little motion memories, but until Twitter, Facebook, and all the other apps let you share them, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. The SE is still the best bang for the buck, though, in iPhones. It looks just like an iPhone 5S, but its insides are basically an iPhone 6S. I've been living with the SE again, and it does everything fine, except that screen, being so small, with a lot of bezel too, takes some getting used to. You're either in love with the idea of a super small phone, think you can deal with it for the price, or hate it. You probably already know the answer. The iPhone 7 and 7 Plus are still better phones, but you don't actually lose all that much with the SE. The iPhone 7 is finally water resistant this time, IP67. So if you end up in this, or end up jumping into a bath or a pool, you should be fine. I wouldn't go swimming with it, and Apple says definitely don't put it in salt water. And if you happen to get it wet, dry it off for a few hours before charging it. The camera on the 7 is better, especially with low light photos, and the flash is improved too. The front-facing camera is also improved, again, for video and photos. Good news for self-streamers. See this? I recorded all my selfie videos on it.
J-E-T-S, jets, jets, jets!
It's not any more shatterproof, and the new jet black color collects lots of scratches, but these are pretty practical upgrades overall. You know what's not practical? Losing a headphone jack. iPhone 7 Plus is the bigger iPhone 7. Just like the other 7, it's water resistant, it's got better battery, and it's got a faster processor. But the real difference is the dual lens camera on the back.
The two lenses, the wide angle and the telephoto lenses on the back, has an impressive range to it, and The zoom is incredible. The button, the 1x button here, switches between one lens, and then we use hit it, it's a 2x, we switch to the telephoto lens, so we're getting no digital zoom. This is all optical zoom. The software, I can tell, really is doing an amazing job of isolating the color pixels, and there's no bleed in the color. All of them are very well defined.
The iPhone 8 feels more like an iPhone 7S. From the outside, you won't have much to show off, but inside there are quite a few upgrades. The 4.7-inch 8 still has the same size body, but with a glass back this time that allows wireless charging, compatible with the common Qi standard. The 8 still lacks a dual camera this time around too, which means no telephoto or portrait bokeh effects. You'll need to spring for the 8 Plus or the upcoming 10 to get those. This phone does have a blazing fast new chip inside that nearly doubles multitasking speeds. Apple says it enhances augmented reality applications too. With iOS 11, which offers a bunch of new upgrades, like an improved control center, built-in document scanning, and a revamped Siri. The 8 Plus dual cameras are great. Portrait mode is improved and allows extra controls, but there's also portrait lighting, a beta mode that adds simulated 3D lighting to photos. Sometimes the effects are amazing, other times feels forced. New compressed video formats allow 4K video at 60 frames per second and 1080p slow-mo at 240. The 8 Plus is extremely speedy, but its 5.5-inch 1080p display is no different than last year, except for adding Apple's True Tone technology, which adjusts color temperature to match ambient light. An all-new True Depth front camera is the 10's biggest future feature. Depth sensing infrared can scan out a short distance, which is used for a few things right now. Most importantly, those cameras can now unlock your phone and pay for things. Face ID replaces Touch ID. But Face ID and no Touch ID also means no more home button, which means you need to relearn how to use the phone. New gestures control things. It's swipe up to get to the home screen, swipe down from the corner for Control Center, and swipe up and hold for other apps, or swipe the bottom strip to swap apps. Animoji is Apple's Snapchat-like face mapping trick for iMessage, which lets you face puppet animated emoji as you speak. The 10-second clips are cute, but Snapchat's also taking advantage of True Depth with improved face mapping filters too. The XR has an LCD display instead of OLED, nearly full screen, except for the True Depth Face ID sensing camera on the front, same as the other 10 models. Yes, there's a notch. There's a bit more bezel on this phone, but its 6.1-inch LCD still looks great. It's also a bigger screen for movies and games compared to the iPhone XS. The phone's a bit thicker, and it's got aluminum sides instead of steel, along with the glass front and back. But so were the other iPhones before this. The phone's got the same processor as the iPhone XS, with a gig less RAM, but performance is just as fast. Another nice little thing about the XR? Colors. My review unit was white, which was kind of a bummer, but you can get this in red, you can get it in coral, blue, yellow, and even though you may be wearing a case, you might want to show it off. So what's changed in cameras this year? Well, for portraits, front and rear, Apple has a way to finally adjust portrait effects, or bokeh, inside both modes. So it's supposed to not just create better looking portraits, but also you can adjust them. It looks good. I still think there are some things that look a little bit fuzzy about it. There's also added Smart HDR, and what that is basically a way that HDR photos can have a greater range and still look crisp. Yes, Apple put new processors on these phones, the A12 Bionic, which sounds dramatic and is supposed to offer advances, especially in machine learning and AI and augmented reality. These are future technologies built for the stuff to come. These phones support dual SIM in addition to gigabit LTE. Now, dual SIM card support won't come till later this year. One of them will be an eSIM and one of them will be a physical SIM, but that could matter if you're traveling. Also, these phones are supposed to charge faster using wireless Qi chargers. Now, stay tuned for more testing on that. These phones also have added water resistance and dust resistance, IP68. Now, the real difference there is 2 meters for 30 minutes versus last year's 1 meter, which really only comes into play if you've dropped your phones into a really deep pool. I'm gonna make this easy and say that of all 3 iPhones, you're really looking at one iPhone 11 in different variations. And the Pro and Pro Max are the same with different screen sizes. So the difference between the Pro and the 11 really come down to steel or aluminum, and do you go with 2 cameras or 3? Okay, now you're looking through the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and I'm holding the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro. Now all of these phones have a 12 megapixel wide angle, which is what you're looking at now, which is kind of like the standard camera. But they also add ultra wide, which expands out the view, like significantly. This is kind of a specialty shot. You don't have to play with it to get the right framing. Both of those have that, but only the Pro phones have telephoto, which gets super close, 2x optical zoom. The front-facing cameras on all of the iPhone 11 models are the same, and they're better than last year's XS and XR models. They're 12 megapixel cameras, and they're wider so you can fit more people into a shot, which is key. That's been on other phones too. And yes, there's also the slow-fi thing. Slow-mo, selfie, whatever you want to call this. The iPhone 11 has the same LCD display as the iPhone XR, and it looks a lot better than you think. It's perfectly fine. But the iPhone 11 Pro has an OLED display that's higher resolution and is also higher contrast ratio this year and brighter.
This phone looks like a classic iPhone. It's got the forehead, it's got the chin, the home button, but it's the inside. It's that processor that got brought over from the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max that not only makes it run faster, not only brings over new features, but also future-proofs it, meaning this phone will be able to support iOS updates for years. But it only has a single rear camera. It doesn't have Face ID and emoji, Memoji, Slofies. It's missing camera features like night mode and deep fusion processing. But you know what? That's fine. In 2017, while reviewing the iPhone 8, my colleague Scott Stein described it as the let's not spend $1,000 on an iPhone. And 2.5 years later, the same could apply to the iPhone SE, with a tweak. It's the let's not spend $700 on an iPhone 11 iPhone. At first I was like, that can't be right. It's gotta be missing something. But it's not. It's just a small iPhone 12 with the same design, the same support for 5G, the same OLED screen with support for HDR videos. And it has the same ceramic shield covering, the same IP68 rating for dust and water resistance, has the same A14 Bionic processor. They run the same software. They even have the same cameras. The iPhone 12 mini has flat aluminum sides and a glossy glass back. In fact, it isn't much bigger than an iPhone 5, but it's smaller than the 2020 iPhone SE. And one of the first things I noticed about the iPhone 12 is its slabular beauty. Yeah, I know slabular isn't a word, but Apple's idea of premium differs from the flash and spectacle we see in premium Android phones. A straight-edged metal band defines the iPhone 12 much in the same way it did for the iPhone 4, 5, and SE, just without the chamfered edges. When I picked the 12 up, it feels more solid than any iPhone I've ever held. And the build and finish, especially on the 12 Pro, are simply extraordinary. That metal band is also a visible indication of another feature that marks a generational change, 5G. The iPhone 12 and 12 Pro have the best overall camera systems on any phone you can buy. They're capable of capturing excellent photos, recording excellent video, and delivering consistently fantastic images in a range of different environments and lighting. But the iPhone 12 is not without complexity. The iPhone 12 and 12 Pro are ridiculously similar. They both have the same size. They both have the same design, the same display, the same A14 Bionic chip, the same 5G support, the same selfie, wide, and ultra-wide cameras. Heck, they both come in blue. The reason to upgrade from the 12 to the 12 Pro is not as clear as the black and white boxes the phones come in might indicate. When Apple announced the iPhone 12 family, it did something with the Pro Max that it hadn't done in years. Both the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max have a third rear camera with a telephoto lens, but the lens on the 12 Pro Max is longer than the one on the 12 Pro. So there you go. When all is said and done, I do think the iPhone 12 Pro Max is worth an extra $100, especially compared to the 12 Pro. But you have to decide if that's worth it to you. Do you want a larger screen? Do you want a longer battery life? Do you want that heft? Do you want these cameras? Well, what's the price? And is it worth it to you? That's what you have to decide.